Hello, and welcome to the No Wrong Notes podcast, a show hosted by me, Veronica Kokos, holistic voice teacher and singer just like you. Grab a cup of tea, relax, and sit back as we discuss all things singing technique, mindset tips, and more so you can show up as the most confident and creative singer you can be. Hi, friends, and welcome to another episode of No Wrong Notes. How are you guys doing this week? I hope y'all are having a fabulous week. We are fully in the fall season here in the Richmond area, and I am just loving it. I'm loving the weather, loving the vibes, listening to all the fall music, doing all of the fall things like getting our pumpkins, eating like pumpkin chocolate chip cookies, that sort of thing, making chili. Oh my goodness, I'm just loving it. And we are busy in the studio this fall. I am having a blast with the singers that I'm working with. We've got some newbies that have never sung before, which is always exciting, as well as some seasoned singers that took breaks from singing just to come back to it for the joy it brings them. I will say though, if you are listening to this and you want to work with me, there are limits at the moment when it comes to new students, but I'm still enrolling adult singers in my Curious Singer membership. And I'm working on new video content for Curious Singer members, so now is the perfect time to join. I've got a handful of singers in this program at the moment that I am really enjoying working with. They're sending me recordings of their singing practice each week, and I'm sending them about like 10 to 15 minutes of like video, audio responses, just with some tips, exercises that they can use. And some of these members, y'all, they are making huge progress. One of them, she started, I think, back in May in this program and literally had never sung in her life. When I met her, she did the little Curious Singer consultation that you can sign up for, which is linked in the show description. When I met her, she had a really hard time matching pitch. And so we've been working on that skill, and y'all, she is matching pitch, she is growing her head voice, her chest voice, and we're also working on moving smoothly between her chest and head voice. So she has just made huge progress over these last few months, and I'm so proud of her and proud of all of my Curious Singer members. And you can find out more about that program in the show description. Let's get to the meat of this episode, though. We are doing a Q&A episode today with your singing questions, as well as some random other questions that were thrown in there. I haven't done one of these in a while, so I'm really excited to chat with you guys about a few of these topics. Now, hopping into the questions here, the first question asks, what is your favorite go-to warm-up that helps you warm up your voice quickly? This is a great question, and it's a hard one for me to answer, since I feel like there are 5 core warm-ups / exercises that I use that I can do pretty quickly within like 5 to 10 minutes. But if I had to pick just one, I would probably pick this arpeggio pattern that I really like to use. And with this pattern that I'm going to sing for you in a second, I will sometimes use different syllables. So one pattern I like to use here goes like this. So there's that pattern that, gives a little bit more of a classical sound. It's warming up more of my head voice, and I take that one pretty high. So that is one version of the exercise. But what I also like about this exercise is that I'm traveling throughout my range. So I'm moving from chest to head voice. So I'm warming up both of these things. And when I'm doing this kind of exercise, I'm also focusing not just on like warming up chest and head voice, but also moving smoothly from chest to head voice. So moving smoothly and consistently here. Another syllable I like to throw in here, especially if I'm like really short on time and I have no time to play around. I know I need to warm up both my chest voice, my head voice, and also warming up some of my mixing belting skills. I will will often throw in like a moi syllable, so something like this that is more speech-like. Moi, 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 or boy, 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 or whoa, 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 whoa. And like I said, it helps me find, especially with these syllables, these more speech-like syllables, it helps me find and access that mix really, really quickly for instant vocal clarity in that higher part of my range. One thing like that is, and I cannot emphasize this enough with this exercise, y'all. This isn't just about warming up your range. If you're going to do this exercise, you want to strive for evenness from bottom to top. I really try not to sing too heavily at the bottom or the top, but have even airflow and even sound when moving back and forth between the two. So again, this is just my top exercise. I love working with this kind of pattern. And I actually have a couple of variations on this pattern in my warm-up library, which you can access if you take private lessons with me or if you're a member of the Curious Singer membership. Now, moving on to the second question. What is one practice habit singers can build into their daily routine that pays off the most over time? I would probably say having good speaking habits. Your speaking voice and singing voice are the same voice. All of the sounds you make come from your vocal folds located in your larynx, aka your voice box. And how you treat and use your speaking voice affects what your singing voice will sound like. So, how do you treat your speaking voice well? You adopt good speaking habits. There's a lot that I can talk about, but I'll give you 3 big things to keep in mind when it comes to this topic, which is pitch, resonance, and volume. Pitch, resonance, and volume. So first, let's talk about pitch. Think about what pitch you're speaking at throughout most of the day. You don't need to talk in your head voice or your falsetto, but so many singers will talk with vocal fry or talk at the bottom of their range, kind of like this. There isn't inherently wrong with using vocal fry, but if you're using vocal fry all day long, the voice can get tired. And what I do is I speak slightly higher than I think I should speak. So I usually try to speak maybe somewhere in my chest voice, but not at the bottom. So if I catch myself wanting to use some vocal fry, like if I'm catching myself progressively speaking like this and my voice is going lower and lower and I'm using some of that vocal fry, I will consciously try to raise the pitch a little bit. I will pitch slightly higher, like maybe around right here or right here, where these are pitches that feel normal to me. They don't feel like, they don't feel ridiculous is what I'm trying to say. And again, I'm not speaking in my head voice here, since that's really not helpful either, but I am speaking at a pitch that I can sustain all day long. Now, the second thing I mentioned when it comes to good speaking skills, the second thing I mentioned is resonance. And in simple terms, this is referring to whether you're speaking at the back of the throat, which kind of sounds like Patrick from SpongeBob, or if the sound is a little bit brighter and more forward. Now, I personally hate the term forward since you can't actually place your voice anywhere. You can really only make adjustments with your voice, especially with the tongue, thinking about the vowels you're using, to change where your sound resonates and vibrates. But to keep it simple, think forward. And if you find that you're someone that speaks with the voice resonating at the back of the throat, again, like that Patrick sort of sound, experiment with bratty or annoying sounds like, oh my God, hi, just to get a sense of what it feels like, what these brighter, more annoying, bratty sounds feel like. And I would start by saying, oh my God, let's go to the mall with your most annoying voice, noticing where you feel the vibration of that sound compared to where you normally speak. Notice too what the space inside your mouth and throat feels like. I mean, does it feel like a big open space in there, or is it maybe a little bit smaller, more narrow, more normal feeling? So again, resonance is very important when it comes to maintaining good speaking habits. The third thing I mentioned earlier is volume. And I feel like this is maybe not as big of a problem as the first two things I mentioned with a lot of individuals. But just to use myself as an example, a couple years ago, I really caught myself speaking too loudly, especially when I was working with students in lessons. And I mean, I'm talking about really projecting my voice, talking like this, feeling like I needed to when I really didn't. And I noticed this especially when I was teaching online lessons where I'm literally speaking into a microphone like this, like what I'm doing right now. And so I was like, you know what? I really don't need to project my voice that much. People can hear me just fine, even when I'm using less volume than I, feel like I needed to. So this is also something to keep in mind. How much volume are you using? Of course, you maybe don't want to speak too softly. You don't want it to be like this, because then you maybe run the risk of it getting a little bit breathy, and trying to maintain that breathiness all day long can get very tiring as well. But finding like a comfortable volume that feels like you can sustain it all day long without pushing yourself, without trying to speak too loudly and trying to project your voice so much, that's also worth being aware of. So again, pitch, resonance, and volume. Thinking about some of these things, being aware of some of these things as you're speaking throughout the day. I feel like this is probably one of the best things you can do for your voice. Moving on to the third question. I like how other singers sound, and I'm good at copying the way that they sing, but I have a harder time liking my own voice. How do I get comfortable with the way that I sing instead of just copying others? This is an excellent question and a hard one to answer, since I think there are a lot of layers here. I will be blunt and say that it takes time to develop confidence in your own sound. And in my own singing, it's taken a long time to get to the point where I appreciate the way that my voice sounds. Now, I used to be the same way. I was good at copying others' voices, but didn't really believe in my own voice that much. What changed for me was having an understanding of the voice science behind the sounds I was making, understanding how my voice worked, gaining that knowledge, and then practicing it on my own. I am very much a person that lives inside my head. Shout out to the Aquarius placements in my astrological birth chart. And for me, knowledge really does help me feel empowered and comfortable. Knowing how my voice works and then practicing those skills and techniques help me feel better about my own voice. But everyone is different. I know that for some students of mine, they like their voice the most when they're approaching the songs they're singing more creatively. To be more specific, expressing the emotions in the songs they're singing more authentically helps them have more fun with their voice and like their voice more, rather than focusing so much on the vocal technique. Another thing I think can help with this issue is also practicing neutrality towards your voice. Understanding that you may not love your voice right now, but accepting that and not trying to force yourself to love it. Accepting that you may not always feel this way towards your voice. And finally, I think that practicing some gratitude can help with liking your own voice more. I know that sounds corny, I know it sounds cheesy, but there's literal science behind gratitude and how it works and how it can help people. Recognize what your voice does well. Even skills like being able to copy the sounds you hear other singers like Ariana Grande use, that is a skill. Being able to copy other singers is a skill. That is what we call aural skills, or your ability to hear something and match it or sing it back. That is a skill. Recognizing the things you already do well is a great first step towards deeper appreciation for your voice. Moving on to question number 4. What is your biggest pet peeve as a voice teacher? Maybe not necessarily as a voice teacher, but as a voice teacher on social media. My pet peeve is people asking questions like, but what about, and then you can insert a totally unique situation like, but what about when I am singing a high note and it feels really scratchy? And I'll get comments like that when I make videos on certain exercises. Like someone commented on one of my videos saying, well, what do I do if I have a paralyzed vocal cord? And it's like, that situation is unfortunate and it's also very unique. I cannot help you if I can't hear you speak or sing. It would also be foolish of me to provide advice to a random person on the internet when they have a vocal issue that specific. Which, by the way, if you are someone that has a speech or singing issue like vocal nodes, a vocal injury, or a paralyzed vocal fold, a voice teacher should not be your first stop. I'm sorry, and I know that especially here in the United States, healthcare increasingly feels like a luxury. But an SLP or speech therapist should be your first go-to if you're dealing with those issues, if you can afford it. Again, I know it's hard for me to say this stuff, because I understand how expensive these things are, but I would not be doing my due diligence as a voice professional if I did not recommend this. And these are trained professionals that work with individuals that have voice disorders. And unless you're consulting with a voice teacher that also doubles as an SLP, because there are voice teachers out there that also double as SLPs, any voice teacher that says they can solve your speech and singing issues alone without consulting an SLP first is being irresponsible. I'm sorry, but that's just the truth of it. And all of that aside, it's hard to address hyper-specific issues over social media when I haven't heard you sing. I don't know what your knowledge base is, what you know already, and I can't understand how your voice works just based on a personal description over a comment on social media. And this is why voice teachers will encourage you to meet with them, through a voice lesson or through their membership programs. It's not that we want to make an extra buck. It's just that we don't want to be irresponsible or unethical over the internet. At least that's how I feel about it. All right. Now, moving on to the last question here. What are your thoughts on Taylor Swift's new album? Oh my God. Okay. Honestly, no comment. I'm just kidding. I will say that I have a lot of thoughts on the album, but nothing that hasn't already been said by literally everyone else on the internet. I feel like there's been so much discourse on this that I'm kind of sick of it. But in short, there were some musically catchy songs, specifically the first 3 songs. But overall, I was disappointed in the lyrics and how immature, both lyrically and emotionally, they sounded. But rather get into the weeds with that album, I want to talk about a topic that goes along with this album, as well as other albums that have come out over the last few years. And that is the topic of quantity over quality that's really been happening with music since the 2020s started, though probably before that too. What I'm trying to say is that with the rise of streaming platforms, artists and record labels seem to be more concerned with putting out content and staying on people's radars through putting out new music every single year, rather than dedicating time to building a project of an album. And I get why artists do this too. Streaming platforms don't pay well, period. Of course, you're going to release more music more often so you can pay those bills. And it really concerns me that this is the direction that we seem to be headed in, since it sacrifices quality in the process. Artists like Drake and Taylor Swift are releasing albums that are made up of singles, not a cohesive musical project with a central theme, thoughtful lyrics, and music that flows from one track to the next. And I don't know what the answer is either, but I think that Taylor's, Sabrina Carpenter's, and Drake / Party Next Door's album releases this year are all a symptom of the greater issue at hand. And that's all I'll say about that. Now to end on a more positive note, I feel like these last two questions I've kind of been on fire a little bit. I will share some album recommendations for artists that I do think are putting out quality music right now. And here's what I would recommend when it comes to albums that have come out this year in 2025. The first is Bad Bunny's Debí Tirar Más Fotos. Jesus, I really botched that. Debí Tirar Más Fotos. That album is just fabulous through and through. I love how he incorporates different styles like reggaeton, salsa, all of these other styles in his music. It's fabulous. The second one is Lady Gaga's Mayhem. I feel like this is a return to form for her. And I'm not a particular fan of the nostalgia that's crept into music over the last few years, but this reminds me of Lady Gaga from The Fame, but Lady Gaga all grown up and singing about different things, which is what you want from an artist, you know, but super cool. The third one I'll recommend is Bon Iver's Sable Fable. I think that's how you pronounce it, or how you pronounce his name. I think this is great for people that are like OG Bon Iver fans. The next one I'll recommend is Lord's Virgin. I do think this album was a little disconnected at times when it came to the flow of the album and how songs kind of flowed from one to the next, but still good quality production there. The next one I'd recommend is Clips's Let God Sort 'Em Out. Just a great album. Then Tyler, the Creator's Don't Touch the Glass. Great danceable album. I love putting that one on, especially when I'm running. Just very high energy. And then the last one I'll recommend is Olivia Dean's The Art of Loving. I just think that Olivia Dean is putting out some really fun and interesting music. She's got some really good vocals, good songwriting, good production. So yeah, those are some I would recommend. But that is it for this episode. If you liked this episode, I'd really appreciate it if you could leave a 5-star rating and review. You can follow me on social media. Those are linked in the show description. In the meantime, happy singing, y'all.